making another roundup video because I'm still catching up on a lot of 2024 releases before I make my final list. Don't know when that's going to be, but here are some movies that I saw recently that I think are very much worth your time. So let's just get this started. The Devil's Bath. This is a sort of horror adjacent drama that is from the filmmakers behind Goodnight Mommy from several years ago that made a bit of a splash here in the US. And I believe this is Austria's entry for the Oscars. This is a very bleak movie with a capital B that follows this woman who is feeling very isolated in this German village in the 1700s, and it sort of deals in how religious institutions can create this atmosphere of oppression that can really not bode well for people who are struggling mentally. And let's just say, I'm not going to give too much away, but let's just say the movie opens with a scene of a woman, a baby, and the rest of the movie kind of fits in that tone. So not a fun time, but it's very engaging, and I think the performances are really strong and definitely worth your time if you're okay with not feeling very good for the rest of the week. And speaking of terrible religious institutions, I saw Small Things Like These, which is about a guy who sort of finds out about the not so open secret of the goings on at this convent in this small Irish town and the way they kind of treat the women that they take in. And it is more of a character study than anything else and less of a let's talk about like all the terrible things that happen to these women at this place run by these nuns. And they do kind of get into it, but they don't get into like a lot of specifics. It really is more about this guy and his history and his relationship to the people in his town and how it's sort of this thing where they don't want to ruffle the feathers of people who are very powerful because the church has their fingers everywhere, and if they try to speak out against the things that are happening at this convent, then it could deal with very real consequences in their lives. And I think the way the film sort of resolves itself is very simple, but also very powerful and very much about the strength that it takes to just do an act of kindness. And Cillian Murphy is the lead in this, and he is so good and so natural and just so insanely gifted at just expressing how he feels without really saying a word. I was really impressed with the film. I think it's very strong. The sound design is really, really great in this movie. And yeah, it's, again, not a fun watch, but it's very good. The Girl with the Needle is a Danish film that follows this woman who is dealing with a lot of things in her life, and she ends up working with this older woman who turns out to be this very infamous serial killer who was wreaking havoc in Denmark post-World War I, and she often targeted vulnerable women and specifically their children. And I swear not all these movies are going to be like dark and depressing, but this is a very haunting film, and I think it has some of the best black and white cinematography of any movie in like the 21st century. I love the way it played with shadows and contrast, and it kind of reminded me of like The Elephant Man, and it has a great sense of place, and the performances are really strong, and I was really enthralled by it, and it was terrifying, but also just really engrossing. The Piano Lesson is an adaptation of an August Wilson play. It's the directorial debut of Malcolm Washington, and this is very much a performer's movie where they just take the words on the page and just bring them to life. Everyone is giving stellar performances across the board, and I liked how the movie explored the impact and the legacy of this single object to this family and the way it sort of leaves a mark on each and every individual. Everyone is very distinct and very unique, and they all kind of put their stamp on these characters, and I just found it really interesting. Next up is The Last Showgirl, which is from Gia Coppola. It is a very intimate character study that stars Pamela Anderson, who gives an incredible, very vulnerable performance in this. It's kind of like what The Wrestler was for Mickey Rourke. This is to Pamela Anderson, and it's absolutely worth seeing. It's very rich and very character focused, and I like the way she plays off the other characters, and even the other actors in this film are very strong, but it's definitely Anderson's movie like front to back, and it is just so compelling. And we're ending on a fun one with Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl. This is just an absolute delight. If you enjoyed The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, then obviously you're going to have a good time with this one. The craftsmanship with the claymation is as strong as ever. Aardman just does not miss. And I think it's still really impressive seeing them create the set pieces, that feel so precise and so calculated, but still have that chaotic and spontaneous energy to it. I don't know if the chase sequence at the end of this is quite as great as the train sequence from Curse of the Were Rabbit, but it's still really funny and very enjoyable. And it's on Netflix right now, so you got no excuse. So, those are my recommendations. If you've seen any of these movies, feel free to let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.